Fodor's argument in this article. So today's class, we were talking about the issue. If you don't want to stick around right now, for anyone who doesn't want to be here, I will be talking about all this stuff again next class. So you would not be missing anything leaving right now. It's just if you want a little background before you go into the reading, I'm going to give you a little spiel right now. But if you don't care, do not worry about it. So
Can I just say something quick? I
yeah,
think that this is very helpful because I kind of feel the same way. Like I'm always also looking things up while I'm doing the reading to
yeah.
try and understand like what they're speaking about. So if there's any way that you can kind of give us these spiels like before the next class is reading, like as an end cap to the class
I
prior.
think that's a great. I will try to start doing that moving forward. I think that's a great idea. I don't know how it'll work with timing, but I'll do my damnedest. And so we'll see how this goes. But here's the general idea: is we start off with today's class was here's why eliminative materialism is bad. What we didn't talk about is what is it about folk psychology or common sense psychology that's so good? Why is it that it's not just we have to be folk psychologists because eliminative materialism is bad and this is the only thing that's left? Why is it that we actually have something pretty sophisticated here? And he basically just, the first half of the article is a really long-winded way of just saying there's 3 reasons to think that folk psychology is good. Number 1, it explains a lot. And so his idea with the first one, and this is his thing with that first part of the article, in which he just quotes Shakespeare and then unpacks the Shakespeare article. What he's trying to show is that this is an incredibly complicated line of reasoning that any human being who was watching the Shakespeare play is more or less able to find the humor in the fact that one person thought one thing, which caused him to think this other thing, which made him think about this other person's thought. And so his idea in the first part is just look at the explanatory power of folk psychology. Folk psychology gets things right so much of the time that ignoring it is just folly. What we need to do is take it and make it more precise, make it more focused. So that's really the first bunch of the article is just him explaining, look at how powerful and wonderful folk psychology is. It works so well that most of the time we don't even remember it's there, and just pause for a second and marvel at how good it is. And that's the first sign that it's a really powerful, great theory. The second thing he wants to bring up is it's a deep, complex theory. So now there's a little bit in here on what's the word? Clauses. There's a little bit in here which is unnecessarily complicated on ceteris paribus clauses. I'm going to send an email about that just so that makes it easier. But what ceteris paribus means is a big fancy way of saying all else being equal. So it's basically these little things that are in a lot of explanations that we say, like, my dog will bark at 6 p.m. And that's a ceteris paribus explanation, because that's my dog will bark at 6 p.m., all else being equal. If my neighbor gets mad and shoots him in the head, he's not going to bark at 6 p.m. So like we ignore everything else. So don't worry about that yet. I will email about the ceteris paribus clauses. Secondly, it's a deep and complex theory. And what he means by this is it's not just a surface level sort of thing of like when somebody wants something, they get it. It's rather that folk psychology is actually a pretty sophisticated thing that takes into account how much someone wants something, what their other desires are. So it's not just like you see this, spit out response. So it's not just like a simple sort of system. It's not nearly as simple and stupid as someone like the Churchlands say it is. So in the article, the Churchlands were trying to argue that it's just as bad of a theory as alchemy or any other sort of failed science. And he wants to say, in a failed science like alchemy, their thought was something like, if it had mercury in it, it's shiny. Like that is a dumb, useful thing. In ancient Aristotelian biology, it was like, what makes something fall asleep? Well, it has a sleepiness agent in it, was basically what it is. And Fodor wants to say, no, folk psychology is deep, complex, and involves a lot of calculations. Let me pull up now the third thing. I'm shooting from the hip. Oh, where did I put my other computer? Give me 1 second, because I'm off the top of my head forgetting what his third reason is. It's ineliminable. So ineliminable just means you can't get rid of it. And so what, and this was actually, whose question was this? Hudson, was this yours? About couldn't you just explain the behaviors or the ideas in terms of biology? And so what he's trying to say is when you can't, the reason that you can't get rid of folk psychology is even the very thing you want to explain is itself something that can only be described in terms of folk psychological terms. You can't describe it in terms of behaviors or in terms of things like that. So to capture, like, what is it to walk to the store? Well, to walk to the store is to have a destination in mind and aim towards that destination. If you happen to walk past the store because that happens to be your way, that's not walking to the store. So the very behaviors we're trying to explain are themselves folk psychological. So it's not only that we can't get rid of folk psychology in our explanations, it's rather that the very thing that psychology is looking to explain and the very object that we're interested in is itself so intimately tied with folk psychology that if we get rid of folk psychology, we get rid of the very thing we're trying to explain. So that's how the third argument works. So just briefly, for the first thing, it's literally just Fodor running down 3 reasons to keep folk psychology around and why to use it as our starting point for science and for psychological study more generally. We begin with folk psychology because it's so good, because it's already a pretty complicated theory that we could make more precise, and because if we want to keep explaining the things we want to explain, we can't get rid of it. So that's the general structure of the article. Does that help at all?
To be honest, yeah. First thing that he actually worked in City University of New York for 2 years. The second, I mean, he was a student of Hilary Putnam, and who actually explained things so much clearer than him. So, so I can say that he is hilarious, you know, and easy to understand.
Yeah, yeah. Fodor. Here's the thing. I'm going to shut this off again. Is there a group chat? No, but I'm emailing everybody this. Wait, there is not a group chat for this class, right? You guys haven't made one yet? I don't think
so.
Okay, so I'm going to email out to everybody as well, just so you can all communicate. And my policy, and I'll explain the policy next class too. But basically, my policy is I'm happy to post the link, and I promise never to go in it, so that you can all shit talk me all you want.